Welcome to the Clearly Christian Podcast with Dr. Cy Smith. It's time to know more so you can say no more. It's time for the Clearly Christian Podcast. Here's your host, Dr. Cy Smith.
I'm Dr. Cy Smith, and this is Clearly Christian, a podcast about what it means to see the world from God's perspective, and then the impact this has on training the next generation to live a life consistent with the biblical worldview. If you like the show you've been listening, I'd encourage you to hit the subscribe button, leave a review of some kind. That'll let others know the show is worth listening to and help us advance our mission, and that is the cause of Christian education. Well, today's extra credit version of the Clearly Christian Podcast is going to be a deeper dive into my conversation with the president of Open Door Christian Schools, Dr. Denver Daniel. And what we're going to do today, a little something different in that we're going to bring in our host, Bryan of our particular show, or I should say our producer of our particular show, and bring that in and just have him and I going to discuss a little bit about this particular episode and perhaps some of the takeaways there that we heard from Dr. Daniel in that particular episode. So, Bryan, welcome. Always good to talk to you, and thanks for being a part of this show. And really, as you look back on that particular episode, what struck you or what stood out as most important there, or some of the takeaways for you?
The thing that I really kind of am interested in hearing you talk more about is the idea of stewardship. And in the show, we talked about it, how it was all things, loving God with everything that you have and all things. What does that mean, though, when it comes to leadership, and especially at a Christian education? Can you dive a little deeper into that?
I think the role of the leader, and I think what Denver was trying to express there, and I think what Moeller writes about it as well, and maybe that's the perspective he's coming from, because it is so broad, and as a leadership, it's so big in that you're thinking, well, you've been set up here to lead this organization, and that's not just with the people, which are the most important things that, God's put in your care, all those people on the org chart, and most people would understand that, right? There's a leader, and then there's everybody else on down through. We kind of get that, hey, it's my responsibility to take care of those people. But it's also my responsibility to see that this whole organization, the finances, the time that we spent on certain projects, the things that we chase down as values, for instance, in our business, what should kids learn, right? That's up to us. Well, ultimately, that does fall on the leader's shoulders. You say, well, we'll just determine what they learn in ninth grade history from the people at XYZ Publishing Company. Not in private schools, and not really education. It's your job as a teacher and then a principal and ultimately the leader of the school to say, nope, this is what we're going to learn in ninth grade history or geography. That's quite a responsibility when you talk about even knowledge you're trying to steward.
But how does stewardship factor into that? How do you feel like that helping kids and your organization grow that way is part of stewardship? How do you define stewardship in that role?
Yeah, that this responsibility, it falls on me in a human sense, but God's in control. He's sovereign. He'll take it from there. All I've got to do is be obedient to his word and follow him, and I've got to stay in close contact with him so that I can do what he's asked me to do. In other words, he's put me in this position and said, I want you to lead my people. I want you to lead my school. I want you to lead these students. And you can go, wow, that is how am I supposed to do that? How am I supposed to steward on your behalf? In other words, I want you to lead them as I would lead them. Well, I'm not God. How am I supposed to know what you want? Well, you got to talk to me. You got to be in close connection to me. You got to figure it out in your relationship with me so that you can steward my creation very, very well, whether that's the child that's easy to love or the child that's hard to love, or, the families, the resources, things like that. It's an awesome responsibility.
So that helps to summarize the entire show then that we talked about with how that stewardship factors in. I'm then now interested in the other thing he talked about a lot, which was congruency. And being very purposeful all the time and doing stewardship all the time and passionate all the time. And yet, we talked about it a little bit after the show, Si, if you remember, there's so many things. You've got seminars to go to, and you got parents calling, and you've got alumni wanting things. You've got so many different distractions. How do you stay on point, passionate, and congruent in stewardship as a leader?
Yeah, great point. Yeah, great point. Because as you mentioned, I mean, we're running a daycare, a preschool. I mean, we're starting kids at 18 to 36 months, right? And then we've got 18-year-old seniors who are going to graduate in, another 8+ months or something like that. And so then thousands of alums and parents and constituents and donors and things like that. It is so much to manage and so much to juggle that, as I said on the show, you can get so overwhelmed and distracted every day. I mean, it just can walk through your door at any moment if you start to just live there and camp out there and think of all the things that you're entrusted and responsible for. Like I said, that's why Moeller writes, it's only for the brave, because you better really know that, there's a lot riding on me. And yet, on the other hand, what helps you cope is you say, this mission is so much bigger than me. It doesn't depend on me. The only way we could be successful here is if God makes it successful, because it's huge. We're trying to influence kids with a biblical worldview so that they will change society. I can't do that alone. No one person can do that alone. And so you're going to need to be very dependent on him. And by congruent, saying, hey, everything's got to match up here. I got to make sure he's first, right? Just as the scripture, I got to seek him first. Then all those other things will line up, and I can do those things in congruency well, as long as I have made him the priority and say, okay, God, where do you want me to go here? Help me listen well, because I've got this issue, this issue, this issue, this issue. They will all be congruent if I start with him. If I say, here's what I want here, here's what I want here, here's what I want here, but it may not be congruent if I haven't lined it up with him first.
And is that then, as we kind of wrap this up, is that then where passion comes in? Does passion help keep you on the straight and narrow?
Yeah, you better. That's exactly right. You better have some passion for this, because you're going to need tremendous energy to see and to stay the course, right? You're going to need courage. You're going to need strength. You're going to just have to be motivated. And it's not just a self-help, I'm going to buckle up by the bootstraps. It's that, and I said this to a group recently, and they really took it to heart, but I said, it's great when you know why you get up in the morning, what your purpose in life is all about, and what there's meaning to your life, right? I mean, you never have to question that. And that just cultivates passion. I mean, because man, I'm doing something that's so much bigger than me. And I love this. I mean, this is why I was born. I think I told the audience, I know why I was born. I was made for this. This is how I was knitted together in my mother's womb, so to speak, as it says in the scriptures, that God said, this is what I want you to do. And man, when you know that is your lot in life, your calling in life, and your charge in life, how do you not get passionate about that?
Last thing I'll say, I'll let you kind of wrap it up. But the last thing I'll say is all that you just said. We didn't talk about this in the last show, but that has a lot to do with just any leader, right? This is the leadership series. It doesn't have to be of a Christian education. If you're leading someone or something, I mean, what you just said has a lot of power for that.
Exactly. You've had to bring that to your life. I mean, that is, I can't, Viktor Frankl, maybe there was somebody who wrote a book that was like one of the top selling books of all time. And it was about just your meaning in life. I mean, people want to know it. Everybody's kind of desperate for that answer. We're wired to search for that. I think that's how God made us as humans, even just right from the cradle. We want to know why we exist, right? We want to know, what's my purpose here? What happens when I die? That's just part of being human. That's it. And when you get there, and you won't get there without God, that's why you're wired this way. There's that void in there that only he can fill. When you get there and you know it, it's a game changer for anyone, no matter what their position. Well, thank you again for our discussion. Thanks for those great questions. And thank you for joining me on this extra credit version. We'll see you next time on Clearly Christian. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Clearly Christian podcast with Dr. Cy Smith. Hear more episodes at clearlychristianeducation.com. If you'd like more information about Christian education in your neighborhood, or if you're interested in education opportunities at Mansfield Christian School, or if you agree with Dr. Smith and want to help him in his mission to influence and awaken Christian America, you can send Dr. Smith an email through the clearlychristianeducation.com website. Message him on the Clearly Christian LinkedIn or Facebook page, or call the Clearly Christian Connection line at 419-756-5651. This has been the Clearly Christian Podcast with Dr. Cy Smith on clearlychristianeducation.com, brought to you in conjunction with Mansfield Christian School, a Bryan Media production.